From the USA to Merseyside and beyond, welcome to the Blue Frontier. Insightful Everton analysis for every Blue with James Boyman, Ryan Williams, and Sean Kahn.
Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Frontier. James here, joined by my fellow co-hosts Sean Kahn and Ryan Williams. And we're here today to bring you our, albeit slightly delayed, Premier League preview. The window is not yet closed, but the season has officially started. But we're going to go through what we're calling the other 16. We've excluded some teams that will become clear as we move through the episode. City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, and moving through the rest, going over all of the business they've done this summer, providing a little bit of context on the previous season, and talking about what we think they might be able to achieve this season. So with that, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. We appreciate that. Follow us on socials. Join our Discord. All of the links in the description. I'll hand it off to Ryan for our first team, newly promoted Sunderland.
Sunderland, I think we already saw what they did in the first week. They did pretty darn well. There's a whole bucket of arrivals. We'll go through those real quickly. One is Habib Diarra, who we all know about, that Everton was supposedly interested in, where they paid a fortune to Strasbourg for, but he was very good. Adingra from Brighton. Enzo Lafia already was there. Obligation to buy from Roma. Talbi, I don't think is quite ready from Bruges, but incredible talent. Like, you want to see a kid with skills. He's it. And their big leadership, Grant Xhaka from Bayern Leverkusen, comes back into the Premier League. Late minute addition of a right back, Nordi Mukiele from PSG. Do we need a right back? I thought maybe we did. He could do that too. It sounds like we're more interested in center backs at this point. Anyway, a couple different loans and free transfers. Key departures, Joe Bellingham to Dortmund. Obviously, he's the equal of his brother going to Dortmund for $30.5 million. He's not, but that'll be interesting. He's a pretty good player. So that is a loss. And Tom Watson took his 5-wood with him to Brighton. So a very young, talented player. But clearly, I think, guys, when you look at the recruitment strategy, it is designed to do one thing and one thing only. It's to stay up, but without completely wrecking their roster. So a lot of young players, but many of these young players are ready to go. They're ready to step in, I think, and play a role. And you saw their great first match. Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a while. I think all of us remember when Sunderland was a team in the Premier League. We all know the lovely series about Sunderland too, and raves and just general patheticness. And as sad as that was, I'm sure these people have just got to be thrilled. I think there were tears at full time and the whole 9 yards. A special thanks to Frank Lampard for making sure in the playoffs that he permitted Sunderland to go through. He's no Vitor Pereira. We'll get to him in a little bit, of course. But yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting that Tom Watson managed to chip it in the net for the winner, and then he's gone. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, they've been really aggressive in going to get players. There are a lot of players that are under 25, but mix that in with experience. And a lot of the under 25-year-old guys, they can play already. I mean, they're capable of playing at this level. It'll be interesting if they have enough. Some of the guys that maybe can make the jump, I think, are questionable. But look, we've seen this before, guys, with the promoted teams. I mean, they just keep going back down. This seems like a legitimate effort to try and keep them up without completely sacrificing the future. So you can't discount their home field advantage. The passion of their fans is going to be outrageous this year. They're hard not to root for, in my personal opinion. But I guess really fundamentally, the major question is here, do they have enough to stay up?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, Ryan. I think one person that we didn't really mention was Noah Siddiqui in the midfield. I think he's going to be somebody that is going to play a big role for them. As well as Robin Roofs from Nijmegen. And I thought he had a really good start. Sunderland fans are already comparing him to Craig Gordon. But I think one thing also to look at is AFCON, right? This team is going to be absolutely decimated by AFCON in the month of December. So it will not be a December to remember for Sunderland. So they really need to do what they can to get as many points before that period, just because if they're in trouble, that's not going to be a great time for them.
And look, they maybe see some loans here at the last minute too, and some other efforts to try and bring some people in. They brought in some frees. It's not crazy that they're going to need additional depth. But James, kind of curious your take. Do you think on the surface, though, they've done enough at least to give it a go?
I think that of all the teams that have come up, they've certainly approached it I'd argue the best way possible. I mean, even just going back to last season in the championship when they announced that Enzo Lafay deal, that was such a coup for them at the time, and I think they've really demonstrated an ambition in trying to stay up. And of the three, they'd be my pick to do so. I think Xhaka is like, the older signing that gives you kind of that spine in midfield. I like them to stay up, especially as we go through this and look at some of the maybe teams that are considered mainstays, the business they have not done. And it might just be activity bias on my part, right? They've just done a lot of business and a lot of these other clubs haven't. But, from an approach standpoint, it's clear they have a strategy and they're following it.
So I'll wrap with this one too. I don't think they're going to quite have enough. That being said, normally you think the team that was not as good in the championship would struggle. I mean, that's a big leap to go and win the playoff and make it. But I do think they're a little bit rare in that way, in the fact that they have a handful of guys that do have talent enough to play in the Premier League. They were a little bit more uneven. And I will say this, having a good midfield is a big difference. And I think they do have that. I think they'll give it a go. I don't know if they're quite going to get there. However, this next team might be the one, if you're going to pick out three of them that could stay up. God knows they looked pretty darn good in their first match, may have been the opponents. But Sean, take her away and talk to us through Leeds United.
Yeah, of course, as Ryan mentioned, just a really tough start for Everton, but of course for Leeds fans, very exciting to be back in the Premier League. The arrivals, one of my favorite kind of arrivals to the Premier League, and I've talked him up, is Anton Stock from Hoffenheim. Really good get for them, and believe it or not, you can do business before August. Leeds have proved it. Noah Okafor from AC Milan, that should be announced tomorrow for $20 million. I think that gives them, as you could see, their attack is pretty putrid. Jacob Bijol from Udinese for $18 million. I think he's going to be one to watch as somebody that can help them on set pieces. A bit of a clumsy defender, but somebody that I think will improve their center back ranks. Lucas Perry from Lyon. I think massive upgrade towards Ilian Meslier, but I think, to be fair, any three of us in goal would be a massive upgrade on him. Sean Longstaff from Newcastle, I think, is just more depth than anything, but somebody that, of course, fits the 6-foot rank, which seems to be a new rule under Daniel Fark. Gabriel Gudmundsson from Lille, we talked about him for $11 million. That seems like a good bit of business. Sebastian Bourneau from Wolfsburg, $6 million. And then, of course, the Freeze. One of them we know very well, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who decided to not play on Monday, and we thank him for that. And Lucas Mecha from Wolfsburg, who, of course, scored the penalty from Wolfsburg. Departures, not really anybody notable. Rasmus Christensen's kind of another good Victor Order sign of business for $6 million, but Junior Firpo on a free, and then Mateo Joseph on loan. So I think the biggest thing with Leeds, of course, as a talking point, is Daniel Fark. He didn't do well in either of his stints back with Norwich, but of course I think what Leeds have learned is they're going to have a lot of size and they're going to be very athletic, right? And I think we saw that even though they weren't as clinical on the attack against our defense. Ao Tanaka is somebody, in my opinion, to really watch out for. Really good business from them last season. Really helped them win the championship at 100 points. In terms of goals, Joel Perot is going to be the guy at the moment. He scored 19 goals last season. I don't think he's going to really have the same success in the Premier League. However, it'll be interesting in regards to the strategy that we saw. A lot of set pieces, a lot of crosses, right? That could be something for DCL, really, if he can stay healthy, to take advantage of. In terms of the defense, I think that's where they're probably going to be the biggest question marks. Of course, we talked about Bijol. He's probably going to be partnering Pascal Struck. Of course, Bijol was not in the Everton match just due to red card accumulation. Gabriel Gudmundsson, of course, at left back, I think is an improvement. Be interesting to see what they do at right back permanently in terms of, I know Isaac Smith's been a discussion point. But yeah, of course, if Perry has a good season, then they could definitely stay up. I think the biggest question mark for them will be how they score because, of course, as putrid as Everton was, outside of the penalty, I didn't really see them, with much of an attacking threat at all. And of course, you get the, as Ryan mentioned earlier with Sunderland, they're going to get up for their first home game, right? Reality is going to strike with them this week when they play Arsenal. So I personally disagree. I don't think they are going to stay up. I think the midfield is going to be great for them. I think they're going to struggle to score goals. And I do wonder when, Fark is under fire, if he's going to be able to, change any tactics as well as any new additions for them. But curious on your thoughts in regards to Leeds United.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to score goals either. I think that's a fair question. I do like their fullback pairing, though. I think Bogle's a pretty good player. Center backs, lots of question marks there for me as well. I know they brought in some volume. Ampadu looked fine as long as he doesn't have to do too much sitting behind those guys in the midfield. It could be a strength, but I'm not seeing a ton of depth there as well. I don't think Okafor is necessarily the answer, but he might be able to do some more stuff in the final third. And that's the problem. I mean, they got to have someone that can really score and break through lines in the final third. Everton were terrible, but they're not the easiest team to break down. It just looked like Leeds were never going to score. In the second half, they looked particularly pathetic, but they did score on a very obvious handball. Glad the officials got that right. So I think Pirro has no prayer of staying in the Premier League and doing well. He'll be quickly replaced, I think. He's too inconsistent. He's not athletic enough. I said that at the time when we were rumored to go after him. I don't think we were ever after him at all. I do like Willie, though, and it'll be interesting to see who else they may sneak in the door here. One thing that's really important, too, and that we found out is goalkeeping for a lot of these teams to stay up, and Puri is a pretty good keeper, too, so that will help. But it'll be close. I mean, the one thing that we'll get to here later is that a lot of the Premier League teams, at least at this moment, don't look good at the bottom half of the table. So I don't think it's a situation where in the past where you've got to have such a high standard unless these teams really make some moves, because you've got some teams that are behind the 8-ball a little bit in PSR. And while they look good against Everton, Everton's lineup were a pathetic one and an easy one to press, and that played right into Leeds. And they're not going to be able to keep this up throughout the whole season either. So, James, curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel similarly to both of you. I really don't think the team that Everton put out there on opening day is a good litmus test for the trials and tribulations that Leeds will go through this season. And even with the poor team we put out, they still didn't look all that great. Some of their business is decent. Like we talked about Stock on the last episode. Also like Ryan's little digs just because he wasn't on the post-match.
I like Goodmanson, by the way, too. I think he's a really good left back. I think that's a bargain, and he's Premier League level, in my opinion.
How many matches does Calvert-Lewin play for them will be interesting if he can stay fit. I think that'll be an interesting wrinkle. I can't see them staying up, to be honest, but we shall certainly see. I mean, the Sean Longstaff one, I mean, they took him off the market, so we couldn't. And I don't know. I mean, as much as I like some of their players, Nanto being one, I really doubt the firepower up front. And I think they're going to concede goals. I do over the course of the season. So I think Sunderland at this point have a better squad. The next team on the list, I think you could have maybe a toss-up, and that is my assignment for the day. First assignment, that is, and that is Burnley. They've certainly done a lot of business this summer, as have the other promoted clubs. You start with Ogachukwu from Chelsea for just under 30 million, 28.7. Armando Broja as well from Chelsea. They paid 23 million for him, which I am shocked at. If he can avoid kicking the ground too much this season, maybe he'll have a half-decent campaign for them, but that fee just floored me at the time. Lum Chouna from Lazio, 15 million. Bashir Humphreys from Chelsea, they're just rating Chelsea's excess, 14 million for him. Marcus Edwards from Sporting, loan to buy, winger for 10 million. Actually, kind of like him. I think that might be a good value buy. It's a loan to buy, that is, for 10 million down the road. That may prove to be a pretty good deal. Jaden Anthony from Bournemouth, 9.5 million, left winger, bolstering both sides of the attack. Kalinshi Hartman from Feyenoord, just under 10 million. Left back, not so sure about him. Zion Fleming from Millwall, 8.3 million. Kyle Walker, another deal that they stole right out from under us, 5 million for the 34-year-old. Jacob Brun-Larsen from Stuttgart, 4 million. Max Weiss from Karlsruhe, 4 million. Twanzebe from Ipswich on a free. That might be, I think that's probably a good little value buy for them potentially. Martin Dubravka from Newcastle. Really the big sale for them is James Trafford to Man City for 30 million. The goalkeeper, of course. A couple other minor ones. Josh Brownhill leaving on a free. We know the story with Burnley. Very familiar with the Premier League, but have bounced back and forth in recent years. And Scott Parker is at the helm in this iteration of Burnley coming up. they really rode their incredible defensive record. Maxime Esteve leading that at center half. They were excellent. James Trafford, who's now gone, had a phenomenal season. Their back line, they really didn't concede very much and controlled the ball pretty well at the championship level, which led them to tying Leeds, of course, at 100 points in the championship. The thing with Burnley is the flexibility and adaptability in terms of style. You're coming up, you just don't have the ability to control the ball the way that they do when they go down to the championship. And so now you lost your keeper, who was the core of your defense. And then you're just buying Chelsea's excesses. I don't really like this approach at all. Kyle Walker, Broha, deals that are just kind of crazy. Lyle Foster's good, but I don't see how they're going to score. I think Esteve probably, that's a big leap for him in terms of level of play. Yeah, I don't see this with Burnley at all, you guys. Am I missing anything?
I don't think they acquired a single, maybe even average, certainly above average Premier League player. Not a single one in the window. So, no, I don't think they have a prayer. I mean, I look at that lineup, too, and granted, a lot of these guys weren't plugged into the lineup. I mean, they got ripped pretty good from Tottenham. The only thing they have going for them is that they've retained a lot of the guys that they had last year. But how they mix these guys in, I don't know. Leslie in the midfield, I don't think he's that great yet. Maybe he will be in the future. Broha's an insane fee. How on earth do you... 23 mil... I mean, Chelsea's got to be laughing their tails off. Marcus Edwards is not a bad player, James, to your point. I mean, he's got some class on the ball, but he's undersized. He's not going to be able to create separation in the final third, and they need someone who's going to do it. I mean, Foster's interesting. Anthony's interesting. As good young players off the bench for a mid-table Premier League team, not starting. Twansby might help them a little bit. Maybe Dubravka could play out of his mind. I mean, he's older, but he's still shown some capability in the past. But aside from that, I don't see it. Yeah, I like Chachuna a little bit. He's a decent player, but that might be probably of all the guys they bought, the one guy that I might say, well, that guy might end up being... I'll say this too. I'll give Jacob Brun-Larsen. I've always liked him. I actually thought he was kind of underrated. So they might get some use out of him. But, I mean, who do you see there? Like Hannibal? I mean, God, he's all over the place. That midfield, I don't like. At least the ones that they lined up in there, too. Like Laurent, 30-year-old. I mean, is he really ready to go in there? Josh Cullen, I mean, no offense to the Irish, but, I mean, this guy's not walking into their lineup. So, yeah, I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah, not much to add. I think you guys said it best. It's funny that I'll give Alan Pace credit. He spent money. I just don't think he spent it wisely. Like, you don't need that many players. They could have done a lot better to take Sunderland's approach even on just like you pay a little bit more for more high potential guys because so many of those guys will probably stick with them in the championship, but I just don't see how they'll be contributors to this season. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe if they took a committee approach, it might go better. Anyway, no, moving on. Let's talk about West Ham.
3 for 3 on Diggs.
Right, let's go to West Ham, only because I think when we start talking about the teams that maybe are gettable, for one or two of these relegation promotion teams, is this one of them? I mean, if you kind of look at their record last year, they finished 14th with only 43 points, but 16th in expected points. You look at the arrivals, Todibo was already there. Their obligation, 40 million euros for him. I remember we were linked to him. I'm like, he's not a center back. He's talented, but Hachi Diouf, I think, from Slava Prague's an interesting player. That's a lot of money to pay from a guy to make that jump, though, I think. But he's a physical specimen. I mean, he's might take a little bit, but Kyle Walker-Peters is not a terrible free agent pull for them. And Callum Wilson, frankly, is a backup if they need him, is not the worst thing in the world. But, God, look at the departures, guys. I mean, Mo Kudus was critical for them. Okay, some of the frees not as big a deal, and cats are more safe now in London because Kurt Zuma's gone. I mean, but this is a lot of this is the after effects of just terrible recruitment approaches for West Ham. David Moyes was included in this too. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Steiden improved things when he came on either, but I don't know. I mean, I think you look at the season, I think was very disappointing. You thought maybe if they got a little more health back at the center forward position, if Fulkrug kind of stepped in, that was a big loss for them, not really having a proper center forward. I think that was obviously a concern, but I don't look at this team and I think goals galore either. And look, I think there's still questions about the manager. So There's some talk about Paqueta leaving as well, too. Jared Bowen's a very good player, and you look at some of these guys are okay. Wan-Bissaka's a nice guy on the outside. He's shown some resiliency. He's got some experience, but I mean, I like Max Kilman. Acquired is not good enough. And the midfield was outrageous. Like Guido Rodriguez and Jared Ward-Prowse. Ward-Prowse at 30 million euros or whatever the heck he was, maybe it was 35, was debatably one of the 5 worst transfers in the last 5 years. I mean, that was criminal. Someone should get fired on that. For doing that alone. I mean, that being said, they didn't get fired for signing Danny Ings for 12 million. So at age 31 or whatever the heck he was. But look, it was a big transition between Lopetegui and Graham Potter. So maybe something will happen here, but I don't know, guys. Like, I just see the midfield. I don't see options in the midfield either to make things better. I know they're behind the 8 ball a little bit from a PSR standpoint, which, hey, that's what happens when you have a recruitment approach like this. Everton take a hint. If they sell Paqueta, I don't know how the heck they're going to create anything. Mateus Fernandes might be in from Southampton. They're probably still going to do some business, though, don't we think? They have to, don't they? I mean, this is a legitimate relegation team.
Yeah, I have to say, I think they are in big trouble. As it stands today, I think they're in big trouble. It is the chickens come home to roost situation for years of mismanagement, both under the previous manager and then, you sign Graham Potter, who, to be fair, I think a lot of us were advocating for as the Sean Dyche replacement at the time. I have not been impressed with what he's been able to do at West Ham, and part of it is the squad. And to Ryan's point, they have a couple decent pieces, but Kudus was so important to them. And now you're going to rely so heavily on Bowen. I mean, they're a couple injuries away from really, really being in a bad spot. And it wouldn't give me any pleasure to see West Ham go down. I don't really harbor any ill will towards them, but I do think they are, should that happen, or if they continue to perform right about where they did last season, it's a great case study. In the previous episode we did on their recruitment of why this approach of try to shoot up above your station, as it were, for a couple of years and get a trophy or something.
Which they did.
They did. And, look, if they get relegated, the people who have been saying, well, if Moyes comes in and gets a trophy at Everton, you have to take the long form view, which is what we've done. But Todibo, look, it's a crazy fee. Kyle Walker-Peters on a free. I think Everton would have been. Now we're staring down the barrel. That would have been a decent deal. We were looking at Callum Wilson. They lost a number of guys on freeze. If they have to make at least 3 or 4 more signings.
And look, so say they manage to get rid of Edson Alvarez, or someone like that. I think the key to me is improving the midfield. Areola's a good keeper too, assuming he's there. Mavropanos is risky, but he gives them some depth at center back. So does Alvarez though too. Callum Wilson, I don't hate as a backup. Souček's not a bad player. He's still kind of useful for them. So there's some pieces in there. I do like the fact that Walker-Peters gives them a little backup. Diouf does not have to come in and be a world beater immediately, and I do think Wan-Bissaka is at least a solid Premier League player. There's some stuff there, but you have to get some legitimate defensive midfielders that can control a match just a little bit. How can Graham Potter be reasonably expected to implement his style of play where he likes to get on the ball without the ability to control the ball in the midfield? Sean, I'm kind of curious your take on here. Obviously, you have a lot of depth and Premier League knowledge, and I know you have some opinions over some of these players individually, but I mean, without any additional business, this midfield gets cut to pieces, doesn't it?
I think one thing that we didn't talk about is David Sullivan's role and how bad of an owner he is. And I think with just no footballing structure at all right there, you're seeing things to head. I mean, so many season ticket holders did not renew their season tickets this season. I think they're fed up, and I don't blame them. So enough with West Ham. I'm going to get to what people think my second favorite team is, which I disagree with. Indisputably. Yeah, the vibe check is unfortunately usually correct here.
I thought you just liked the animal.
I do like the animal. And what Ryan is referring to are Wolverhampton Wanderers. They were 16th last season, 42 points, 17th in expected points. Our rivals, let's start with departures first, because I think that's the bigger one. Of course, Matheus Cunha, the well-mannered Matheus Cunha, went to Man U for $74 million. Rayan El-Nouri, who I think we've all spoken very high of, to left back to Man City. Very good attacking left back. They're going to miss him for $36.8. Gonçalo Guedes is one of the worst deals. It's up there with Ryan's, JWP deal and just a nonsensical moves that they made and never used him to Sociedad for $4 million. James's favorite player, Tommy Doyle, to Birmingham as a loan. Good loan for them. I think a good experience for him.
I still kind of like him, James. No,
That's not a dig. It's just at the end of the day, he's getting
championship.
He's going to get experience.
Such a perfect, super active physical player.
He's going to get experience. No, it's a good deal for both sides. Nelson Semedo, of course, to Fenerbahce. Pablo Sarabia to one of many, Saudi Arabia teams. So good for him to get his bag. But of course, the arrivals, right? Because of course, Vitor Pereira, also very mild-mannered, is very keen to replace those guys. And so, of course, Jorgen Strand Larsen, he was there last season. That loan came as an obligation at $27 million, which actually doesn't look too bad if he can stay healthy. Ferrer Lopez, who I'm actually very high from Celta Vigo, the winger, who I think will do a really good job. And of course, another guy that I would say Ryan is pretty high on is John Arias from Fluminense. So some good business there. Jackson Chichua from Hellas Verona, one of the fastest right backs in the Serie A. Of course, Wolves fans did not really appreciate that, as their comments were very negative. And of course, the most appropriate signing that they've made is David Wolf from AZ Alkmaar. But I think the biggest thing with Wolves they are just fed up with their owner, Jeff Shee. I think they have lost so many of their key players throughout the seasons. They did back Vitor Pereira in the January window, where I hate to say it, but he did a great job for them. Marshall Munetsi and Emmanuel Agbadou would highlight that list. I think Emmanuel Agbadou was one of the best center backs, last part of the season. Did a really good job of really stabilizing that defense, which under Gary O'Neill got 0 clean sheets. And of course, Vitor Pereira did a good job of just really kind of steadying the ship and making them a stable Premier League club for the back half. Of course, they had some injuries, but I'll tell you what, that midfield two of João Gomez and Andre is elite. So for a team that really was as bad as they were, to have 3 of Brazil's starting 11 is really impressive. I think they're going to struggle this season if they don't add some more quality. I think that attack actually looks interesting. I know they didn't really have a good preseason, but if Strand Larsen, John Arias gets back, used to the Premier League, and Fernando Lopez can provide some quality, that midfield 2 of Andre and João Gomez, and I think their back 3 with the wing backs of David Wolf and Chichua, I think can be interesting. I think it's really going to also come back to Jose Sa, and if he can have a decent season. He's been all over the place, of course, one of the best buys at the time. I think they're going to need some more help. I think they will stay up, but I think it will be close if they don't add players. I'm curious your guys' thoughts.
Well, a couple things. I mean, unfortunately, some of the metrics indicate that they might be in a little trouble. And when you have the second highest non-penalty goals versus non-penalty expected goals in the league at plus 9.3, Cunha being a big part of that. And then you got the second worst post-shot expected goals plus minus, and Sa comes back. God, he looked bad against City again, man. I mean, he gave up some goals where kind of got his hand on it. I mean, I just don't know if that's going to last. I'll give a little credit to Vitor Pereira, too. I mean, he had them playing. You know how hard it is not to make, wolf cracks and stuff when you do this? He had them barking at the moon, He had them playing like Werewolves of London. They were hungry like the wolf. I mean, I could do this all day, really. But in all seriousness, he's no Frank Lampard, but he did a very good job with them. They were 12th when he, under his watch when he took over. He did fairly well. And from February 1st on, they were 7th in the table. Granted, they were 13th in expected points. Maybe there was some luck. I get it. They've had some moves at guys that have been rejected. Matthias Albalin from Nantes, who's an interesting center forward, rejected them. They're making a move for Marc Asado. I can't believe Barca's selling him. That's a really interesting young talent.
Seems like it could be a Mendes ploy, so we'll see.
Yeah, and that's a trigger. But the problem is, Sean, that you're right. Jorge Mendes can get guys in through Gestafoot like he has in the past. But if they're behind the 8 ball with PSR, does it matter? There's only so much they can do.
That's how they got Andre, right? And so,
sure.
You get it for every Andre, they'll get a Gonçalo Guedes. So we'll see.
But the problem with doing that, Sean, is you've had to pay a lot of agent fees too. So those transfer fees get added on to, and it can be problematic. James, I'm kind of curious your take on this one, too. I think they might be in a little bit of trouble, too. I do love John Arias, too, Sean, but it's still a big jump, you know? I think he'll do okay, and he was one of the best wingers in South America for sure, and he is a little bit more mature, but I don't know. It'd be very interesting. James, do you have the same fears as we do?
I do. I think there's very few players in the league who are as integral to their team's performance as Mateus Cunha was to Wolves last year, and I just don't see them having replaced his output and, frankly, some of his overperformances in terms of the numbers. So without that attacking output, I do agree, like, Arias is a good signing. Strand Larson, big fee, but I think that'll be a decent addition. But I don't see them having done quite enough as it stands, and with the guys rejecting them, they're another team that, among many, that need to get some deals done.
I mean, Huang, Kalajic, remember they still have him? My God.
Yeah, and they still have some talent, no doubt, but those guys will need to take on an increased role and certainly produce additional output.
Like that midfield, though, Sean Conn, to your point. I mean, it's really important, right? I mean, and those guys can boss a game for sure. And, if they could pick up some points, I mean, the battles are going to be key against relegation teams, for sure. And they can get on the ball a little bit, even if that's not Vitor's preference. James, another team that might be in a little bit of trouble, but they are one of the best run clubs in the league and seem to have had no problem staying up in many instances. The Bees, are they in trouble, James?
Yes. Well, we'll discuss that momentarily. Of course, Brentford last season finished 10th on 56 points. They were 11th in expected points, 54.94. Look, similar to West Ham, I think you have to start with the departures for Brentford because, first and foremost, they lost their long-standing manager, Thomas Frank, of course, who went to Spurs, and then they lost the majority of their goals from last season. Mbeumo to Manchester United for $75 million, which is eye-watering fee. Christian Norgard to Arsenal for 11.6. Mark Flecken to Leverkusen. And then the last one I alluded to, Johan Vissa, looks like he's probably on his way out, though that's not official. Between Mbeumo and Vissa, 39 goals combined for Brentford last season. Thomas Frank has been succeeded by Keith Andrews, who is Brentford's set-piece coach and will be very acutely familiar with the squad, but kind of a risk for Brentford to appoint someone with no experience as the main man leading the charge. They have made some interesting signings, starting with Dango Atara from Bournemouth for $42.8 million, which feels very much like they are aware that they lost a lot of their goals and really wanted to secure someone who can score some from Bournemouth. I think that's kind of an overpay. Otara, I like him as a player quite a bit, but that feels like they just have money to burn and they wanted to do it expeditiously. Anthony Malambo, attacking midfielder, 20 from Feyenoord. I mean, 20 million for him. He's young. He's pretty decent. Michael Kayota, 20, right back from Fiorentina, guy we talked about in the squad assessment. Decent player, and that's a loan to buy, so a deferred payment there of 17.5 million euros. Queven Kelleher, 26-year-old goalkeeper from Liverpool. Give them some additional options back there for just under 15 million. Ramel Donovan, attacking mid/winger, 18 years old from Birmingham, just under 4 million for him. And then Jordan Henderson from Ajax. We know he's a midfielder. We know he's probably desperate to try to claw his way back into the England squad for the World Cup, and so he returns to England for Brentford. That is a free transfer. I don't know. This is a lot of change in one season. And yes, Brentford are an extraordinarily well-run club, efficient operations, generally very efficient recruitment. But what do you do when you have to deal with this amount of change? I have some concerns with them for sure. Malambo's one we talked about. I think that's really kind of the big signing. And they still do have some really good talent. The thing with Brentford is they've also been ravaged by injuries in seasons of late. So if you combine another injury fiasco with the loss of some of your key goal scorers and offensive output, could make for a pretty ugly situation. But I also, Keane Lewis-Potter, I do think is a pretty solid player. Shada, also useful if he can stay fit. Aaron Hickey, outside back, another one who's been injured a lot, but is a quality player when available. Ayer, defensive midfielder, pretty solid. Carvalho's one that they signed last year. I think they overpaid for him too, and I don't actually think he's all that great. Yeah, I can very easily see them struggle this season just with the loss of those guys if Vissa does in fact leave. What are your guys' thoughts?
They can't afford any injuries. I think that's the biggest thing. I think their squad is pretty thin. I do think it's interesting because a lot of folks are just writing them off, but I think they might not know that they actually have, like, as you mentioned, I think Kevin Schade is going to probably have a really good season now that, Wissa and Buemo and are gone. Igor Thiago, if he stays healthy, I mean, that's a guy that I think can score goals for them, right? The midfield to me is where they're going to miss, of course, Christian Norgard. I think he was just very, very solid. Matthias Jensen, I think, is a good player. Yarmouk is going to have to make a step up. I think one guy we forgot to mention because he was gone for maternity was Mikhail Damsgaard, right? So he's going to obviously have a massive role to play. Their center backs are not bad, Nathan Collins and Rico Henry. So I think it's good to see Rico Henry back. It'll be interesting. I think they have a solid squad. I don't really know if Keith Andrews is going to kind of be able to put his set piece magic to play. Aaron Hickey as a backup, right now, because Coyote's going to be the starter. Everton should have a look maybe. So, but I think they will be near the bottom, but I don't think they're by any means a surefire bet, as some folks are saying, to go down.
It was also kind of a weird performance for them. There were a lot of guys that just weren't available. Vissa wasn't there. Damsgaard wasn't there. Janelt wasn't there. He's really important for them. Other guys that didn't play, Rorslev wasn't. Ayers wasn't there either. I mean, they were on the bench and didn't come in, which, I think if you're going to try and kill off a game, those might be options as well. Shade's a decent player too. They look like they need more, but they do have money to spend. And so, but God, it's really hard to replace those guys. And you opt for a manager that, okay, you promoted from within, but there's still a lot of risk in that, I think. Maybe less risk than bringing in someone new off the street. But yeah, they're going to have to find goals. And I just think in particular, you look at kind of their attacking options from the wide spaces. Buemo was so important for them. And I mean, Lewis Potter, I mean, come on, man. Carvalho, these guys are not good enough. So I think that's really where they need to improve. It will be interesting if Jordan Henderson can replicate anything that Norgard did. Probably not, but you never know. I mean, he knows the city.
Finger pointing, Ryan. That's about it. So.
Well, yeah, that is about it. So I don't know. I mean, the other thing is too, they had some benefits last year too. They finished pretty high in the table, but they were fourth in the league again in shooting, in essence, non-penalty goals versus expected goals. But a lot of that was Buemo just was on fire. Schade was higher than that too. So I don't know. So any final thoughts before I move to the Steady Eddies in Fulham? All right. So they finished 11th, 9th in expected points. Marco Silva just doing a very solid job at Fulham too. No arrivals of note. Carlos Vinicius leaves to Gremio, but no real losses there either. So, they have, I know, a lovely stadium by the Thames. They improved the stand. Everything's lovely for them. They have a cottage in the corner. I mean, who the heck would ever want them to go down? Now, look, I mean, they stayed somewhat healthy last year, and look, they've got some great performances from people. Alex Iwobi, of course. I know that, maybe people recognize that I think highly of him as a player, but he was unbelievable, to be perfectly honest. Raul Jimenez scoring 13 goals. I mean, that was a little surprising too. Yeah, I mean, some of these guys, Emile Smith-Rowe is really going to have to step up again and kind of take it up a notch, I think. And Jedi Robinson, when he's in there, man, him and Iwobi on that side are tremendous. And Lino's a solid keeper too. It does sound like they're close to Kevin. Yes, that's what he goes by. Brazilian Kevin, former Palmeiras player from Shakhtar. I've watched Kevin. I think Kevin is a very good fit for the Premier League. But they're talking about $45 million. That's absolutely insane. I don't know where the heck they're getting that number from. Apparently Muniz was maybe moving to Atalanta. And yes, I just wanted to say Atalanta because it's fun. But they were asking for like 40, 50 million. So look, I think it's pretty obvious that Fulham are content where they're at. But with the splash or two, maybe that will make sure that they'll be firmly mid-table. I'm not necessarily seeing a team that I think is going to, perform better than what they did last year. But, maybe that's okay. And you never know. With a little luck, maybe they go a little bit higher. But not a lot really a dialogue here. They're just kind of a solid team, right, guys?
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add on Fulham. I think they'll be comfortably safe, comfortably mid-table, and I think they're perfectly okay with that. No issues. Not really an offensive team, like you said, Ryan. I mean, I think they're fine. And, yeah, I don't really see them having any major issues, but also not a whole lot of excitement.
They have a cottage.
Yeah. Nice stadium. Charge a lot of money for it. That's about it. So,
because they can.
Now I'm going to a team that I actually enjoy watching, and that's Bournemouth.
Not when they're playing Everton, though.
Not when they're playing Everton.
You know what? They're awesome to watch, man.
They are so fun, and I bought stock well before anybody else did. So they were 9th last season with 56 points, 3rd in expected points at 65. So you could really see that they got the short end of the stick a lot. Let's start with departures because there's some big ones, and credit to them, credit to Thiago Pinto and Bill Foley, just running a massively well-run organization.
Thiago Pinto, where'd he come from?
Roma. So
who owns Roma?
We'll get to that in a bit.
Sporting director, right? It's a director of football model? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just checking.
Yeah, it's a normal model, Ryan. So of course,
is their head coach really involved in recruitment, Sean?
No, not to my knowledge.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right,
so
moving on.
The departures. Of course, Ilir Zabanye to PSG. They bought him for 30 million, sold him for 63. Dean Hudson to Real Madrid, sold him, of course, the release clause at $62.5 million. Milos Kerkez to Liverpool for $46.9 million. Of course, Dango Ouattara to Brentford at $2.8 million. So some massive fees there. Credit to them. Jadon Anthony to Burnley at $9.5. Of course, Mark Travers to Everton, 4.6, and Joe Rothwell to Rangers. So one thing to know about Bournemouth is they have been very strategic in knowing who they're going to sell and replacing them. So the Zabanye sale, for example, was held up just simply because they got Bafode Diakité from Lille for $35 million. And then, of course, actually really upgraded at the keeper position. They've been using guys on loans, of course, Neto, Kepa, Mark Travers, and so Georgi Petrovic, who I know we are all very high on from his time with the Revolution and, of course, at Chelsea, $28.9 million. Ben Doak from Liverpool at $23.2 million. And a guy that I'm really high on that I think actually could be an upgrade on Milos Kerkez is Adrian Truffert from Rennes at $13.5 million. So it's a team that I think a lot of folks were nervous coming into the summer just because they got a lot of those guys. They knew that they were going to kind of have a bit of an air raid, but I think that fact that they were able to keep Andoni Areola just because his stock was super high is a really big statement of intent from them. And of course, they already had some really good players. Of course, Antoine Semenyo, if you didn't know how good he was before, he certainly announced it game week 1, but of course had a great season for them last. The midfield is going to be key. Tyler Adams and Alex Scott staying healthy will be a massive boost to them. But even if they're injured, Ryan Christie and Lewis Cook, I thought, did a really good job of, really implementing Areola's system. I would agree in the sense of I know Ryan thinks they need a new center back. I don't think Senesi is good enough. I would agree with that. But I think on the wings, you'll see a little bit more of Julio Soler. And I think he's, somebody that wasn't really used last year. The forwards is going to be interesting. Evan Nielsen had a good season last year with 10 goals, but I think they expect more. As they should, and of course Enes Unal. So I think they have good forward competition. But what it's really going to come down to is the wings, because of course they'll lose Dango, but of course Amin Adli and Ben Doak coming in, right? Can they help on that side? I don't think Marcus Tavernier is unfortunately really good enough. Justin Kluivert had a really good season as well last season. Interesting to see how he does. But I think it's just going to be another solid season for Bournemouth. I don't think they have enough for Europe, but they certainly will not be anywhere near the relegation zone. Your thoughts?
They just have such a distinct style of play. You know what I mean? If you look at kind of how they do it. Again, they have a clear identity. They have a clear scheme. They have a very good manager that is right in line with that. But they do need to replace some of the guys that left and upgrade talent. There's still some gaps there. They tried to get Bade in from Sevilla. He rejected them for Leverkusen, and that will be a problem. I mean, Bournemouth doesn't have that level of revenue, that steady level of revenue to pay the wages. And that's the big thing. That's why they'll need to be a selling club, at least until they increase the stadium, match game day revenue, make Europe, whatever. Molina, also the right back from Atletico Madrid, rejected them. But look, I mean, they, tons of long balls, the most long balls in the league. Highest pressuring team in the league, number 1 in PPDA. Most fouls, highest challenge intensity, which is a measure of duels, tackles, and interceptions per minute of opponent possession by far in the league. And that's how they play, man. They'll kick you. They'll be aggressive. They'll press you. They'll get the ball up and down the pitch. And they play with a certain level of intensity that's amazing. So Adli and Ben Doak coming in, I would call him Ouattara. I know you guys love it when I say that. That's an outrageous fee for him, for a player that's talented, is a physical specimen, but very limited in my opinion. I mean, kind of, had to play almost like as a wing back. And look, I mean, I just, Last year, the interesting thing is Jordy Petrovic is really, really good. However, Kepa and Travers had them first in the league by almost 3 goals in post-shot XG plus minus. And that's outrageous if you think about it. And, I think Everton did smart to make a move for Travers. I maybe wouldn't have paid for a backup keeper, but he's clearly a good player. I just think it's hard to make a judgment on these guys until you see the business that they end up doing. And I will say this, you're right. Health in the midfield is absolutely key. Tyler Adams is awesome, man. He is a really, really good player, an important player for them. He can control the midfield. He's not overly expansive, but he takes care of the ball and wins balls, and he fights and claws for everything. And they've got some depth in some other positions. They just need to fill in with some talent in some of those primary positions. But if they can score themselves another center back, get some talent more on the wings, I mean, this team could finish even better, honestly.
I don't have much to add. I think you guys both nailed it. It just makes me a little bit sad to talk about Bournemouth, a team with a fraction of the resources of Everton, being run so incredibly well, recruiting so incredibly well, making these enormous profits on guys, and then with a clear plan in place. And that could not be more starkly contrasted with the next team on the list, which is, of course, the topic of this show on 99.999% of episodes. It will be a topic today, but we'll try not to beat it into the ground too much. I think this will be a good forum for us to vent our frustrations right smack dab in the middle of this episode. That is, of course, time to talk about Everton. We all know we finished 13th last year on 48 points, 15th in expected points on 47.65, and we know the business that we've done, and we know the volume of players we lost, if not the quality of players we lost. Mopai to Marseille for $4 million, Ashley Young to Ipswich, Mason Holgate, see ya. João Virginia to Sporting on a free, Begovic to Leicester on a free. Decore, still no club. Dominic Calvert-Lewin signed with Leeds as of earlier this week. And we know, of course, the business that we've done, starting with Jack Grealish on a very expensive loan from Manchester City, Tierno Barry from Villarreal, 30 million euros, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall from Chelsea, just shy of 30 million, made that option permanent for Charlie Alcaraz, 15 million, Adam Asnu, 9 million from Bayern Munich, Mark Travers from Bournemouth, 4.6. And we still have not addressed the 3 main positions of need. So we're running out of time here. We know that David Moyes, we know about the transfer committee. We know that we've been linked with Nathan Ake as of a few hours ago. We don't seem to be linked to anyone that solves any of the glaring needs that were on full display against Leeds just a few days ago. Are there any positives looking at Everton with just a few weeks left in the window that you guys can glean? I think we're all fairly concerned at this point, and I have not felt better since Monday. I have not had my spirits lifted or my vibes improved.
Well, I wasn't uplifted by the news that Nathan Ake is a target of the club. I mean, to me, that would be West Ham had their moment in Jared Ward-Prowse for James. Oh, I did it again. I do that every time.
You do it every time.
Every single time. Sorry, Jimmy. It's. I talked about the structure. I think you're getting exactly what I expected to happen. It's a whole lot of balance, whatever the heck that means. And I don't see a clear plan or a clear strategy. No, I don't see much hope at all. I mean, I think that it's very easy to find anyone with a pulse that's a decent player to upgrade what we have in right wing, which is nothing, and right back, which is nothing. Midfield's really concerning, though, to me. I think we've got to upgrade in there whatsoever, and I just think it's hard. There's enough time to do it, so I still think we'll probably end up anywhere, like I said, in between 13th and 10th, but what's disappointing for me is there's not enough investment to me in young players. People say that's not true. They have Asnu, they have Barry. Maybe we get Dibbling in the door. That's a nice group of young, talented players, but at what price? I don't know. I'm not optimistic at all, but I just think the structure's flawed. I don't think the individuals in charge of it really. I think Angus Kinnear is incredibly naive when it comes to football, even though I think he's a capable CEO. And the fact that he has to preside over the football because of this decentralized structure he has, like I thought would be going into the window, eventually Moyes will take over and we'll see more ready-made players and we'll overpay some guys before the deadline. And it'll put us in a tougher space and spot and probably need massive changes in the summer. But that's my take.
Yeah, let's see what happens in 2 weeks on to Brighton.
Yeah, and now for another team that's better run than Everton. Brighton Hove Albion. Well, the one thing that about them, though, that is curious, and we'll talk it a little bit, it is there was a little bit of a change in a model last year in terms of spend. They had a massive net spend last year, the biggest in the league. Similar type profiles that they're recruiting from, but they're really shelling out some pretty big fees for some players right now, and you kind of wonder if they're struggling with that transition from like this aspirational mid-table team to that really going for Europe. And they've been successful in some regards. In other regards, they're just having a little trouble cracking maybe into the top tier. I think injuries, though, did have a little bit to do with it. Anyway, they finished 8th, 10th in expected points. Normally it's the opposite for them, right? Some of the arrivals are interesting. Kostulis from Olympiacos at $35 million. I don't understand that one personally. I know he's very, very young, so of course there could still be a future there, but that was a very high fee to me for a player that there's a lovely generation of young Greek players that are coming on that I think are really interesting. I wouldn't necessarily have singled him out, but their recruitment's been pretty good in the past, so we'll see. Maxim de Kuiper from Club Bruges. Good player, 20 million euros to me is still a little bit high. I mean, I think he's 24, and I don't know if he quite has a physical profile. I think some people are a little higher on him than I am. I do think he has a chance to be a good player, and he's not a terrible replacement for Estupiñán, who went to AC Milan for 17 million. Again, Tom Watson brings his golf clubs from Sunderland. Very young player. We'll see what kind of impact he can have. Diego Coppola from Hellas Verona, I think is a fantastic acquisition for 11 million. He is a super talented player. This is the type of acquisition that you're like, Everton, what are you doing? Du Young Yoon from Dijon. I've been to Dijon, lovely hot springs in Dijon. For 2 million. That's an interesting acquisition. Might be a bit of a theme there in terms of where they're sourcing players from, but kudos for them. But the departures are massive. I mean, João Pedro, that's a great fee for him, but he's a super talent going to Chelsea. And he's so versatile. He could play so many different places. You had a feeling Adingra was going to move. 25 million, maybe an okay fee. We'll see how he does with Sunderland. I would have liked for Everton to maybe take a look there too. I don't like them moving Barco to Strasbourg. This kid is so talented and so skilled. I can't believe they can't. I know he doesn't have the best physical profile and he looks like he's about 5 years old, but I really think he's a talented guy. They may regret that one. Evan Ferguson to Rome on loan, whatever. Yeah, I mean, look, they didn't lose the first 7 games of the season and looked fantastic, right? And then that force just mowed them over, and they had a lot of injuries, but they bounced right back to that, and everything looked good, and then they only won 1 in April, and then 3 of the last 4 in May, and I think Verbruggen maybe his first season as starter, that was an interesting thought in here that, he was the worst in the league in expected goals conceded, according to FOTMob. That's a big deal, He's no Jordan Pickford. So that's one way they're very different as clubs, maybe. But that kid's a talented player. So I wouldn't expect that necessarily to continue. I mean, Herzler, that's a big step up as a rookie coach. Matt O'Reilly getting back from injury. They may be out the door, but I like him. I think he's a talent. And Balaba's a big question mark to me. He's just such a maniac in midfield. I think Yari's an interesting young player. Both those guys are a little bit raw, but with the mix of guys like Dunk and Van Heck, I think they have a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if Yankuba Minte takes a big step forward in terms of production. We know he's a beast outright. He's got the physical profile, very left-footed, but he can be very active and very dangerous. If he can kind of start to produce a little bit more, they could be dangerous. And I think Ruder does slot in nicely for Pedro. They're similar. But look, guys, injuries. They played 32 players last year, second most in the league. Made the highest number of subs, mostly due to injury. I don't know, still the second youngest team in the Premier League. I don't know. The questions are right back too. I really thought Kadgulu, when they picked him up, I thought, wow, they kind of opted for a more ready-made player, but he's not really made an impact yet. I don't know. Thoughts, guys? I mean, this team could be anywhere, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it well, Ryan. I worry about the center backs. I think Lewis Dunk is starting to age a little bit. He's still very steady. Van Hecke, I think, is a little bit overrated. I think he's good. I don't think he's that good. It'll be interesting to see how De Kuiper replaces Estupiñán and Ruter. I think that's a question mark for me, but I agree. They could be anywhere.
Did we even mention Matoma? Did I miss his name coming up? I mean, that's another really good player that they have on their hands on the wings.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's just so good and kind of surprised maybe that other clubs haven't just bid over the moon for him, but he is 28 years old. I agree with you, Ryan. I think Minta makes a big step forward this year for sure. I think James Milner makes a big step back, perhaps. But beyond that, just well run. And we'll see what they do in terms of outlay. We did a whole big look at Brighton ahead of the summer when we were looking at recruitment philosophies and approaches. And Ryan alluded to it at the start. Interesting to see kind of what direction they go. They kind of have secured, and I think squad-wise, very comfortably mid-table. What do they do to try to kind of push themselves further up?
And with them, it's always whether some of these talents make the jump forward. We said Minta,
Sure.
but I mean, it could be Diego Gomez. Like, he's a super talent, Gruda, for example. Like, there's a super talent too. I mean, that guy, if things start to click with him, that's exciting. And I don't know. Veltman, we didn't even mention here. Biscagli, I like that acquisition. Like, he's a good ball-playing left footer, and they got him for nothing. I mean, they can find a role for him. He could even play defensive mid. They still have a lot of players, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with guys like Enciso if he stays. Solly Marsh is injured again, Lamptey, Hinshelwood. There's a lot of young talent. So if some of these guys make the jump, sky's the limit.
All right. On to another team that I just do not have hatred for, but it seems a lot of people do, is Crystal Palace. And there has not been much for Palace either, and I think that's a bit of a talking point that we really wanted on this pod. There are teams that just aren't doing activity, right? We talked to Fulham about Fulham. There's a few others, of course. But for Palace, especially given that they do have Europe, it's not the Europa, it's going to be conference. The only rivals thus far are Borna Sosa and Walter Benitez. Of course, the departures are quiet for now. That will change probably in 24 hours with Eberechi Eze not going to Spurs, it seems like, U-turn, going to Arsenal. So decided to choose another London outlet, and kind of funny how that all happened, especially given that Kai Havertz's injury kind of forced Arsenal's hand to do business. Palace wanted Eze available for their game tomorrow in Europe. So life comes at you fast. But I think Palace has really turned into a pretty well-run organization. Of course, Oliver Glasner, when he was appointed, I think was a really, really good manager for him to replace Roy Hodgson, who did a good job in his second stint. But they have some just really solid players. I think that's the thing. In terms of the tactics, right, of course, they'll play that kind of 3-4-3. But, of course, the center backs, are pretty plentiful there. Lacroix, not the drink, but of course, really had a good season. I know some question marks coming on what he can do. Of course, Chris Richards, as we all know, U.S. center back, I think had a great season for them last season. You can't miss talking about, of course, Mark Gahey, who, of course, might be gone, but finds a way to stay. And, of course, I think will do a good job if he does. The wingbacks, Daniel Munoz, can't say enough good things about him. Really good right back for them. And, of course, keeping Tyreek Mitchell. Just a steady left back that's been there for years. That midfield, too, of course, Czech Decore, who I think we're all pretty high on, just can never stay healthy. Will Hughes is as pale as you can get, but he's played really well for them. Adam Wharton, I think, is overrated. However, he can absolutely pass the ball as good as anybody. And, of course, that triangle offense that they have with those two cams and the striker, JP Mateta has turned into a very, very good striker for them. And, of course, Eze and Ismail Assar, who, of course, was linked with Everton for a while. But Eze, losing him, they seem to already have a replacement with Bilal El-Khanous, who I think will slide in really well if they get that done. And, of course, with Mark Gahey, if they let him go, rumors are Ousmane Diomande from Sporting, a 21-year-old center back who I think will be also a good. We also haven't talked about Chidi Riyad, who was out pretty much all of last season. So they do have depth there. And, of course, I cannot forget Hwang on a potential loan. That seems like that will happen. So I just think Palace, I think they'll struggle a little bit with the European competition. But as long as they have some health in those key areas, I think they're going to have another good season. I don't think they're going to, go to Europe. Of course, they made Europe with the FA Cup win, so credit to them, as well as beating Liverpool in the Community Shield. I just think it's going to be a fun season for Palace fans being in Europe, and I think they're not going to have any pressure and worries with relegation.
Their recruitment's been really good, honestly. They haven't had too many misses. They've had some injuries here or there. I'll tell you what, and if Adam Wharton can actually get to being, more of a solid defensive player, get better positioning, and really start to mature a little bit as opposed to just being Mr. Ball progression. And we know he has a great peg on him. It could really make a difference. I think that would be a nice thing to see, so he's a little less hype and a little bit more kind of substance. And Sean, I actually totally agree. Only with your assessment that he's overrated, only because people are rating him like he's the best midfielder on the planet, and that's not really fair to him either. It'll be interesting. I think they're going to still do a little bit of business. Eze's a big loss, but if they bring in a couple guys, they might be okay. Borna Sosa, my God, what a talent, and it just has such a terrible attitude. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, they're a solid team, man. I mean, I really like it. And a lot of these guys can get better. I mean, Chris Richards, man, that guy is fantastic. We were really interested in him at Everton. Just didn't fork up the dough for him, but not surprised how well he's panned out. But who knows, man, if they pick up another couple young players that also have high ceilings, I mean, they've shown that they're good at ID and bringing guys in the door. I mean, it could even get better. I mean, Eze's a big loss, though.
One guy I forgot to mention quickly is Justin Devene. I think he's pretty good, so it'll be interesting to see how they integrate him.
I also think their fans are just kind of going to ride the high of the FA Cup for the entire season, regardless of how this season goes. It could be a complete dumpster fire. I do not think it will be. Fair question of what they do to replace Eze, but I think there were kind of similar questions about what they do to replace Elise last season, and they had really no issues whatsoever doing that. So it seems like they are operating very efficiently, and they have a lot of talent. You guys talked about them all, so I won't belabor the point. I will instead move on to the next team on our list. It is Manchester United. Everton, we, of course, saw Everton play Manchester United just a few weeks ago in the summer series in Atlanta, and Manchester United last season had their worst season on record in the Premier League, finishing 15th. 42 points, 12th in X points at 52. So really, really underperformed their expected points. And of course, even with the dumpster fire of a season that both United and Spurs had, they still both made it to a European final. Manchester United were not able to get it over the line. Spurs, of course, managed to secure that trophy. And United might have finally gotten the memo that they are one of the richest clubs in the world and should start acting like it, because they have certainly wasted no time in spending a boatload of money on some players who can immediately slot in and I think improve them, leading with Benjamin Sesko from Leipzig for a whopping 76.5 million, followed by Mbeumo from Brentford, 75 million, and then Mateus Cunha for 74 from Wolves, of course, we talked about. And then, in the way back of the pack, you have Diego Leon from Cerro Porteño at 4 million euros. And really not any major departures. Marcus Rashford, of course, on loan to Barcelona. That's a really interesting one. And they made a lot of fanfare about it, the Catalanians. But I don't know about... Look, I think they'll be much better in attack. We're talking about Garnacho potentially on the way out. The attack is not really the problem for me for Manchester United. It is definitely the midfield. You, of course, have Bruno Fernandes. What role Casemiro plays for them this season, I have some big questions about. I just think he is so slow at this point. Mason Mount, can he stay fit? That was another just enormous outlay of cash that they spent on him for very little return to this point. Of course, like Diogo Dalot at right back, I think he's pretty solid. They have good young talent. We talked about it. Lenny Yoro is still just 19. He's a really good center back, but perhaps still coming to terms with Premier League level. Dorgu, another one. But I mean, still got Xerxes if they need him, but it feels like he'll be firmly on the bench unless they have some injury issues. Diallo, another one. Quality based on the numbers, last season was a little bit of a fluke in terms of league position finish, and they have strengthened. So I could see this very much being a bounce back year for United. They will not finish as low as they did, but I think there's people predicting they finish top 4. I'm not totally sure. They picked up the guys who also overperformed their numbers, maybe the most in the league, in Cunha and Mbeumo among them. So is that something that they can carry over to United, who have been kind of just a graveyard of big money signings who go on to then not achieve with the Red Devils? Your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, so I think their attack is going to be electric. I think even though I agree, James, those guys overperformed. Bruno actually led the league last year with 81 key passes. So as annoying as he is, he can still, of course, progress. And I think given the attacking options they'll have, it'll be a lot better. Goalkeeping to me is still a massive issue, which is wild given that they buy a new keeper, I feel like every 2 or 3 years after De Gea left. So it's just,
What do they
Bandier is
do there at
interesting.
keeper, though, Sean?
I don't know, because Onana, you pay that fee, right? Donnarumma, I think, would be an improvement, right? But then once again, what if he has regression to the mean, right? Because he just was out of his mind in the Champions League. So I think the midfield is going to be a massive concern because Casemiro is just taking wages, right? So I actually like their wing backs. Like if you put Diallo at right back, for example, right wing back, and Dorgu, I think is great. So I think he's good business by them. Center backs, I think, are okay. Harry Maguire, I think, is fine. Like, of course, Lenny Oro, as you mentioned. So I think the thing is they'll be better. I don't know how much better with given the fees that they spent.
Yeah, I think they'll be better. I mean, they're definitely, you'd think they're going to score more goals. I love Šeško. I think he is so talented and so special. I can't believe people are comparing him to Højlund, who they got before. They're totally different players. One was an utter overpay. This kid has elite talent. And Mbeumo and Cunha make a big difference. They really do. I mean, yes, they were both like Mr. Overachiever past their XG. I got it. But they're players, like James said, like that. The big teams, if you have big money, you go get the best players, man. Those guys are very good Premier League players. There's no question about that. And there's not a lot of risk in that regard. It'll be interesting to see how they use Mason Mount. Mason Mount is not that bad. I mean, it was a total overpay, but maybe he could find a role. To me, it's a defensive midfield. I mean, Ugarte's an interesting player. He'll run around and make tackles. He's kind of a maniac, though. I mean, he's not that disciplined and not that skilled. I really liked him when he was in Portugal and thought when he made the jump to France that he would really become this better player, and I don't think he really has. I think he's still too much potential and too reckless. They have a couple injuries, but I think I'm not as convinced of the center backs. Delite's interesting, but he's so slow and cumbersome that even if they're going to play that back three, yeah, I get it, they want an anchor, but he's so unathletic that he forces them to be stretched out at times, and I just don't have faith in their ability to build out from the back. However, if you got some improvements to defensive midfield and they still have money to spend, they should be a lot better, for sure. They shouldn't be way down on the table again. I mean, them at Spurs is the same thing. I mean, that's a little bit fluky. They're certainly better than that. And I mean, there's some consistency in the managerial spot too as well. I don't think that will hurt them, at least in my personal opinion. So anyway, I think we've all said our piece on United. Let's move to Aston Villa. For me, they're an interesting team. I mean, they have a ton of talent, some interesting acquisitions, lots of departures. 6th in the standings, 7th in the expected points. However, from the 5th of February on, they were 2nd in the table. Maybe a little lucky from an expected point standpoint, but they finished pretty well. Yvan Gasson was an arrival from Nice. 30 million euros. What I like about him is his positional flexibility. He can play center forward. He can play right wing. Would have been a great acquisition for Everton. In case you wanted to see that there were actual decent prices for wingers and not everyone is overpriced, that's what happens when you buy exclusively in England. Bournemouth should have shown us. They almost never do. And the one guy they bought from England, Doak, they got from a great fee. So whatever. Oskan from Kasimpasa for 7 million is an interesting player too. I know a little bit about him. I don't think he'll make a massive impact, but some of the departures are big. Jacob Ramsey was an important player for them, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting loss. A couple other minor ones too. Barrenechea to Benfica on loan was a little interesting. I kind of like Enzo. Coutinho finally leaves to Vasco. I mean, my goodness. Robin Olsen of Everton fame. And I thought it was very curious that they moved Leon Bailey out via loan with an option. But to be perfectly honest, Leon Bailey to me is the ultimate super talent underachiever. It's just mentality's never been there. He's not a hard worker. Talented, good left peg, tons of speed. It's so funny. Villa fans don't realize that he's fast. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys in the Bundesliga, literally, like ever. And they don't think he's fast. I mean, what does that tell you? I mean, it's just unbelievable that he's just not willing to put it in. Look, they didn't play well against Newcastle. I think the problem is just look at all these players playing together. Tielemans, McGinn, Kamara, and Onana. In what universe can all four of those play together on the pitch? Thankfully, we avoided John McGinn coming to Everton. I know Moyes loves McGinn, by the way, and has been vocal about it throughout the club. Be interesting if Emmy leaves. Pau Torres is one that I think is a real concern for me. I think he is a fantastic center back, but He's had injury concerns. He's not the sturdiest guy in the world. He sat out there last friendly, hasn't played more than a half this summer, and I think he's a difference maker for them, the way he is, how well he distributes the ball. Some talk about bringing in Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea. That would be pretty interesting. He's kind of an adaptable player, but he's an absolute head case. So I don't understand why you would trade a basket case in Leon Bailey for him. Maybe they're behind the eight ball a little bit from a PSR standpoint and may struggle to bring players in. I think that's important to watch. But again, the lesson learned is don't overpay for older players and give them massive wages. And I think they're guilty of that. And I think they have to own that a little bit. I mean, Konza and Mings is not a center back pairing that I think is one that's going to win a lot. But they have way more left backs than anyone needs. And Ollie Watkins is still there. I mean, there's still plenty of options here and interesting players. Mallon was the only sub they brought in off the bench. The only guy they brought in. I would expect them to make some additions. They have some depth, some places. I like Illing Jr. too, and I don't think they use him. Buendia's back. I mean, you know what I mean? And it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate Gasson. They just need Ross Barkley to get healthy, that's all.
Oh, you really had to just throw that in at the last minute.
I mean, obviously I'm on edge today for this episode, so I figured I'd just bring it fully.
That was an incredibly good summary of Villa. I do not have a whole lot to add other than watching their match at the weekend. It just continues to bum me out to see Luka Dean play for Aston Villa when we have our own struggles positionally, and we had him locked down. I mean, he's 32 now, which is kind of crazy to think about. Onana as well. I mean, I think they still have a pretty decent squad. I know Ryan's not crazy about Tielemans. I think the balance in that midfield is a good call-out. I do think they'll struggle. Trying to fit all those guys in is just a little awkward. Ollie Watkins, I just think he's effective. He's just a really effective striker at the Premier League level. Yeah, he's got the right combination of size and speed and can actually finish, unlike some of the players in Everton's recent past who possess those two attributes. Buendia, I mean, if he can stay fit, that's a very solid player that they have really gotten nothing out of the last couple seasons. And we talked a lot about Illing Jr., who you called out just a moment ago, Ryan, in our target series. There's a player there for sure. What position does he play in is a valid question, but he is incredibly athletic and dynamic, and it'd be interesting to see if he's able to kind of break through into the first team this season.
And look, honestly, I like the move to sell Jacob Ramsey. I mean, that's a big number. He's not some 18-year-old Wunder kid or something like that. I just think the problem that Villa's had is they're too reliant on Morgan Rogers from a creation standpoint. They've got to get more playmakers in there. Tielemans can handle the ball deeper, James. Like, if you package him in the right midfield, he's effective. But when you put all four of those guys out there, McGinn, Tielemans, and Kamara and Onana, it's just too much to me. And those guys got to stay healthy, too.
I just want to throw this in real quick. It's quintessential Ryan objective finance brain to talk about the Ramsey move when everyone has been kicking off about how disgraceful it is and all the drama that's been going on behind the scenes, the homegrown player and whatnot. But I do see the point. I mean, it's a ton of profit on a player, and maybe the right move for both parties in that sense. And I think Newcastle, they're looking to spend money. So with that, we'll keep pushing. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I'm sorry. Like, I'm great that 2 years ago he exploded on the scene and it was great. And I'm glad that he came up with Villa and has been a talented young player, but that is a massive fee. And look at his output the last 2 years in the league. We're talking about 6 goal contributions. He's not been healthy. I mean, maybe now is the time. I mean, you got to take the money. You got to make moves. As they move some other older guys out with big wages, things will get different for them. But this frees them up to bring in a player too, and I'm sure they will do that.
All right, moving on. We're going to go to Nottingham Forest, who have just had quite the summer on and off the pitch. If you didn't know who Forest's owner is, you're living under a rock. So they finished 7th last year with 65 points, 14th in expected points, 50.01, 15-point swing. So pretty massive. Of course, their big departure was Anthony Elanga to Newcastle for $61.4 million. So great fee for them. I think they bought him for about 15. And then they just had some real fun in South America. Just a lot of business in and out. So of course the Botafogo Bogo almost in Igor Jesus and Jair Cunha from Botafogo coming to Forest, and Danilo going out. I like Danilo. I think he's actually a good player, so I think they'll miss him. Ramon Sosa, who of course just had a one-year wonder in Forest, didn't really do much. Good player to Palmeiras. Andrew Underbelly finally goes to Strasbourg permanently. Matt Turner to Lyon, that's just hilarious. Carlos Miguel, very big in stature, to Palmeiras. Lewis O'Brien to Wrexham. But the big ones are going to be their rivals. And Omari Hutchinson, I think, was a massive overpay, in my opinion. I know he's 21, but for that to be your kind of headline transfer, I think is big. Dan Enjoy from Bologna, I think is actually going to be pretty good for them at $42 million. I know it's a little bit of an overpay, but I think he's going to be a better producer than Anthony Elanga. Arnaud Calamendo from Rennes, $30 million. Good forward kind of, I think, rotation for Europe. Chris Wood just continues to do well for them, so if he doesn't, of course, he'll fill in. Douglas Luiz from Juventus, I believe that's going to be a loan to buy. Unclear on that detail, but it looks like the fee will be $30 million, which I think for Forest, Ibrahim Sangare is still there, right? And I think he's actually has a season to prove, so it's interesting why they'd go after him. And I love Elliot Anderson. I think he's turned into a really good player. James McAtee for Man City, $25.5 million. I know Everton were linked with him, and of course getting Angus Gunn as backup for free. So the biggest thing with Forest, being able to keep Morgan Gibbs-White, it seems like English midfielders and Spurs are just not having, they're going to, the stadium and they're turning left or right. Yeah, I think for them, it will be interesting to see if they regress in regards to how they perform to the XG. I think they have a really good team. That center back pairing of Muriel and Milenkovic. Milenkovic, I think, had a great season for them. Ola Aina, I know Ryan is high on him. We've talked him up. He kind of, goes again for Forest. Nico Williams has turned into just a decent, wing back for them. That midfield's going to be interesting if Elliot Anderson can continue to improve. Ryan Yates, I think, is just somebody that's pretty thankless for them, but does a good job. And then, you have Ibrahim Sangare and Douglas Luiz. Morgan Gibbs-White, we can't say enough about him. He's just really, really good. And then, of course, you have now just a kind of a treasure trove of options on both wings. Of course, Enjoy's going to start, I think, on one, but then, McAtee, Hutchinson, and then you have Chris Wood. So it's a good team. I mean, I think, and with Europe, they're being aggressive, right? And Nuno was another manager before. If we did this last week, right, we wouldn't have the amount of business that they had. Just, they almost had a deadline day shopping spree well before the window. So curious your guys' thoughts. I think it's going to be a good season for Forest. I do think they drop down a little bit. I don't think they get Europe again, but I think they're going to be a steady Premier League team.
I do have some concerns, though. I mean, first of all, I think their sales, they did pretty well, honestly. I look at these numbers, I'm like, wow, it was good to turn Ramon Sosa back to Palmeiras and maybe even make money off him. He's a good player, but I don't know if I thought that was a stretch. The Matt Turner thing is hilarious. So sad for him, but Lewis O'Brien, good to get him off the books, whatnot. And that Elanga fee is massive, but I don't know. It sounds like the Douglas Luiz thing may be a loan with an option, so it may not be an obligation. That would be brilliant business. Calimundo from Rennes, I think that's a little bit of an overpay, but he's okay. You can't expect Chris Wood to bang him in every week, although the guy's, honestly, the last 5 years, that guy has scored. Remarkable. He bangs him in. And Doy, I really like as a player, but I don't know if he's an elite player. And so that's kind of a big number in my opinion. The Hutchinson, I think, is a total overpay. I think Hutchinson's okay. He's a left footer. He's just not big. You know what I mean? Can he really separate the final third? I don't know. But the one thing that is true is they play a certain style of play and they've continued to buy and purchase for it. And a guy like Enjoy is a really smart player. He can play behind the ball and then transition. Hudson-Odoi's there. It looks like they signed him, I think, for a longer deal. Gibbs-White. All these guys fit the way that they want to play to a certain level. I don't like the McAtee kind of structure, but man, he's a talent. And, he's a guy that if they could kind of get going, it could be pretty interesting. However, some of the numbers indicate that they're, completely ripe for regression. When you get the highest non-penalty goals versus XG in the league at plus 10.8, can Chris Wood keep that up? 7th in the league in post-shot expected goals plus minus. And look, Sells was like 7.9 difference, right? And he's been negative every season, like since 2020 season at Strasbourg. So how is that possible that he had such a blip and anomaly? Do we really think he can do that again? I don't know. Look, no one played fewer players than these guys, too. They had 13 players that played more than 30 matches. 7 players started 33 or more matches. And you're doing that with the lowest possession in the Premier League. I mean, I just think something's got to give. And then you watch him go and absolutely just knock off Brentford. That being said, you look at that Brentford lineman, it's pretty weak. It'll be interesting to see them, It'll be interesting. They should be good, but I don't know if they can quite do what they did last year.
Yeah, nothing much to add. I think you guys did a really good summary. I will just add quickly on Matt Turner, who I saw, he sat like 3 seats down from me at the Revs game I was at about a month ago when they played Inter Miami. And at the time I was like, oh, he's here. He's, visiting his old club. Little did I know that he would soon be sold to Lyon and immediately loaned back to the MLS. So tough for the guy. Precursor to his homecoming, it turned out. So anyway, on to our next team. It is Tottenham. It is Spurs, Europa League winners, as we all know, after a debacle of a Premier League campaign in which they finished 17th on 38 points. Another huge underperformance because they were 13th in expected points at 50. That is a 12-point difference, and they have started to spend money and try to spend even more. The big headline signing is Mohamed Kudus from West Ham for $63.8 million, which is a big one, and he is a very, very good player. What could have been with Everton. I'll leave it at that. Matisse Tell from Bayern, $35 million. We know he was there on loan at the second half of last season. Kevin Danzo from Lens at $25 million. Luka Vuskovic from Hajduk Split at $11 million. And Kota Takai from Kawasaki Front for just under $6 million. Couple young center backs in there. Interesting. They do have a ton of talent, and we know they've lost one of their most well-known globally players in Heung-min Son to LAFC for $22 million, and another former Everton target in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg going to Marseille for $13.5 million. And they have a new manager to boot, Ange Postecoglou. Not enough to win the Europa League. You got to perform in the Prem, and he did not. Therefore, he's out. Thomas Frank is in and doing fairly decently so far. Took PSG to PKs, of course, and then they beat Burnley. Richarlison featuring in those matches might finally get some play under the new manager, but they have a boatload of injuries already in the form of Maddison, we know, is the headliner there. Ligament injury out for the foreseeable future. Kulusevski, knee injury, expected to be out for at least like another month or so. Dragusin, another ligament injury, knee injury, mid-October, so he'll be probably preparing to return. Udogi, he'll be back pretty soon. But point being, they're ravaged by injuries early on in the season. Be interesting to see what players they move for and potentially move out in the remainder of the window. And of course, they just missed out on Eze at the very last moment to their biggest rival, which has got to be just a real brutal kick in the butt to those fans. They have a good team. They very much underperformed in the league, as we all know, but they have a lot of young guys. They have a lot of very good guys. They spent, obviously, you look at Gray, still only 19. He's only going to get better. I still think they kind of overpaid for him. Bergvall, another one, very young, but potential to be very good. Pedro Porro, very good going forward, not so good defending. I think Kudus changes their attack quite a bit, and if they can get a tune out of Richarlison, attacking-wise, I think they'll be in a decent spot. Solanke, of course, as well. We'll see what he's able to do. And Tell got a ton of time for them last season, and I think is a good player. So thoughts on Spurs going into this campaign? Another one similar to United, I guess, who probably can't be quite as bad as they were.
They stay healthy. They're loaded. They just are. Like, I don't see... There's some questions maybe in the midfield there a bit, but... losing Eze to Arsenal, though, I thought he was a really good replacement for Maddison.
Yeah, one guy to just quickly mention that we forgot is João Palhinha. They got him on loan, and I think he will help a tremendous amount with Champions League and the league. You look, when they're healthy, their midfield's great, and their 2 center backs are good, right? I think it's just a matter of if Van de Ven can stay healthy, but even then, Kevin Danso's a pretty good backup that they made permanent. So they just have, like you said, Ryan, they have just a ton of options. I think that's what's unique. And so for a team that was just kind of, out of it, and it doesn't feel like they added too much, it kind of makes you even wonder why, like, if the son stayed on the team, where he would play. So it's just, I think they're going to have a good season.
I think Thomas Frank factor is just massive.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so solid. He'll do well with these guys. Even they got injuries now. Udogi's injury too, Dragison's out for a bit. I mean, probably still in physical pain from Njai turning him inside out. But the guy's a physical talent. He's not as bad as I think he showed. It was a tough transition. Brian Gill is still there. It just makes me laugh. Maynard Solomon's a curveball too, man. He's a little bit an interesting guy. I think he's a very good player. He was too good for the championship, in my opinion, last year. Is he the type of guy that can maybe fill in if need be in some of those European competitions that don't matter? They'll probably move him, but it'll be very interesting to see what they do. If they were going to go big on a player like Eze, there are still some playmakers out there that they could go after. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And would they move Basuma? Like, I know he's got some serious attitude issues, but man, I mean, God, if Everton could get him on a loan, I don't want to buy a player at that age necessarily, but that would be a tremendous jot in the arm for Everton.
Yeah, and to finish it off, we're going to go with Newcastle. They finished fifth. Of course, Everton beat them on the final day, but they still got Europe. Fifth in expected points, so pretty much right around where they, in terms of points, negative 0.33. Arrivals, pretty quiet. I know two big ones in Anthony Elanga and Jacob Ramsey, as we talked about. Aaron Ramsdale from Southampton, just hilarious. I don't understand that one at all with the loan fee. I know. They have England's number 3 and number 4. Congratulations. So departures, Lloyd Kelly to Juventus. This is one of the weirdest transfers I've ever seen for them to get 17.5. And Lloyd Kelly's a decent player. Sean Longstaff to Leeds, of course, getting 13 million for him, and Callum Wilson free. Newcastle's an interesting team. I think, you look season by season. The season before, they were ravaged by injuries. Last season, they had 10 players play over 30 Premier League games and 15 over 25. And having no Europe, I think, was a massive help to them. Bruno played every game, believe it or not, which was, I think we think very highly of him. His hairstyles are a little bit questionable, but just such a great player. Leads the Premier League in progressions, and then the next highest with 271 progressive passes. The next highest on the team was Tino Livramento, 158, so you could see how important he is. You can't talk about Newcastle without talking about Alexander Isak. Insane season for Newcastle, 23 Premier League goals on an XG of 20.3. Curious what happens with him, because I think the really kind of evaluation of that team really goes in with him, not only if he stays, but if he does go, who do they replace him with? I know Strain Larson was kind of a rumor, but they need to go a lot higher to get a forward at that caliber. They're not going to do anything if Anthony Gordon is playing, the striker role. I also like how Anthony Gordon seems like he watched Ben Stiller dodgeball, because that's the haircut he's emulating nowadays. But it's just a good team, right? If they stay healthy again, I think they're solid at center back. They really need Sven Botman to have a good season of health. I think he's really good. It's just, and it's funny because Fabian Schär, I think, has just been very, very solid. Dan Burn, they, on deadline day a few seasons ago when they were fighting relegation, just what a signing he's turned into. The left back and right back, Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento, just young and good. It's just, I think those are solid options. And even with depth and Trippier and Target, they have decent play. Sandro Tonali's turned into a good player for them. So he bet on himself, and credit to him, and then outside of that, they are just getting production from guys like Jacob Murphy, 9 goals last season. It's just, I don't know how that guy does it, but he's just been a good performer for them. They have good depth on the wings now, of course, Elanga, but Harvey Barnes, somebody that I think is just still underrated, not a starter for them, but just plays a lot and does well when he's called upon. So I think they need some improvements, but they're going to be fine in regards to, of course, the league. I think it will be interesting with injuries. Eddie Howe's a good manager. I think, that's been proven. And it just will be interesting to see the goalkeeping situation, because I don't think Nick Pope has done anything to lose it. But the idea that Aaron Ramsdale's coming in, I don't know if that's just more for Europe or if that's to push him.
Well, Ramsdale's such a winner. You want him on your team. Teams that acquire him normally accomplish lots of things. Changing leagues is a big deal. You want transition, he's your guy. No, in all seriousness, there's just something unbalanced about this team for me for some reason. But I think their key guys have managed to turn out so well and stayed healthy for so long. It just hasn't mattered. Elanga is a nice ad for them. He is a good player, even if they did pay a lot of money for him. Isak's the curveball, man. He's the big guy. I mean, he's really good. He's an elite player. If he leaves, some talk about Vissa maybe coming in to replace him. This is a good player, but not in the same league. Yeah, Newcastle complaining about PSR and, whatnot, but they spent a lot of money, and thankfully they hit on most of their big guys. Conversely, even though I thought Jacob Ramsey got a big fee from Villa, it does have the potential to be very good. And, I've been skeptical of Anthony Gordon, really. I think he had a very good first season with Newcastle, but I don't think he was anything necessarily to write home about last year. They also have some good players that if they can stay healthy, make a big difference. Like Livramento is a fantastic fullback. Can he stay healthy? That's been an issue for him. If he can, they got a plus player at a position where they spent a lot of money on him, but with the intent that he was one of the best guys around. Jacob Murphy's unbelievable, really, the production he's got. He had 20 goal contributions last year in the league. That is crazy. Harvey Barnes had 13 too. I thought that was a great move, but Anthony Gordon has to do better. He really does, in my opinion. But now they have a little more depth in those positions too, and you can never forget Joe Linton, man. For some reason, that guy's the glue guy for their team. He just makes things happen, roams around. Finally got him away from the previous managers that thought he was a center forward because he's big. So I know, it made no sense. And when you watched him play, before he got transferred over, it was very obvious. Anyway, but at a minimum, there's not a massive floor for these guys. They've got too much talent. They're well coached. They have a strong identity. He's going to play the way he keeps doing, and it'll be interesting to see if they get into the higher European mix or not.
All right, that is a good note to end on. As I mentioned at the top, we can conspicuously left off a few clubs because, well, look, they get enough media coverage as it is, so take that as our slight dig at them. Also, in the interest of time, because this is already pushing to be a rather long episode, but we hope that you enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed chatting it up with the guys, and I think this was a very good Premier League preview. Hopefully you leave listening to it feeling more informed and ready to go for the season ahead. It is a long season, and it may be a long season for Everton. But as I said at the end of the last post-match, I'm still holding out hope. There is still time. There isn't much time, but there is some time. So stay tuned. We, of course, face Brighton on Sunday. We will be doing an episode for that match, so we'll be with you next time. Before we leave, just a reminder, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review. Follow us on socials. Reach out, email us, join our Discord, all that good stuff. Until next time, up the Toffees.